Podcast of the week. We do these Monday through Thursday. It is 4 o'clock on Thursday. This is Steve Mazzacane, the Steve Mazzacane Podcast. We have really nothing to go over. Last night, I made a mistake yesterday because I promoted that animal shelter fundraiser for last night. Wasn't last night. It's next Wednesday. So if you need more time to get there, we'll post it again on social media, on Facebook. Next week, we have Christine Cohen, although I'm not sure what day that is. And then at some point, we'll have Rich DiNardo, who was running against Moira Kelly. We've had a pretty full week when it comes to our candidates on, and we're going to be even more full today. So last week we had an issue, technicality with Paul Crisci getting a good sound system. Either his end or my end, doesn't really matter, but we rescheduled him till today. So we're going to ask Paul on now. Give me 1 second here.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good. How's things?
It's good. It's good to see we're all working now. So whatever operating system I have or you have, they work, and we can connect and get answers. You were actually coming through. I could tell what you were saying, but it was just unclear, not coming through the way I'm sure you want to be heard.
So I'm in my office. I was running up and down and all.
I know. We did the best we could, but it does turn out, and I'll have to put out for future people who come on, we're better off using not Firefox, and yeah. So, but we'll figure that out, and I appreciate your patience in working with me on that. So,
thank you.
I've gotten a chance to meet you in a fried dough booth, as I met all the candidates earlier this year. You were covered in dough, working on a fryer, and I appreciate that. I also got a chance to speak with you last time a little bit, but let's kind of start over for the advantage of the audience. First of all, tell me a little bit about yourself and what led you in your life experience to a point where you said, I want to run for office.
Grew up in New York. First of all, thank you very much for having me on. I do appreciate it. I know that this really does matter. It gives people an opportunity to hear both sides. It's, everything gets cramped into a short period of time and running around, especially from a Senate standpoint. It's hard to get every place and talk to everybody. But nevertheless, I grew up in New York, born and raised in the Bronx, and single mom. I always, give her a lot of credit because she was tough. And we grew up I grew up in the era of Mayor Koch, who was a Democrat. And I always tell people when I'm talking to him, because they ask about what made you get into politics now. And it's because I saw the politics that I used to be part of, or that my family used to be part of. It really wasn't as divisive as it is now. Mayor Koch served the people, Republican, Democrat alike. And you would see the politicians actually come to the neighborhood, and neighbors would talk about things. So, but as growing up, I learned a lot of good values from my mother. I give her a lot of credit. My dad is a great guy too. He passed away, but they had been divorced, and she kind of took the reins on things. Got married. I have 3 daughters, and I moved to Connecticut. I think it was 1997. Decided to move here. I was working in the in Fairfield, and I said, someone said to me, you got to check out this town, Monroe. And I went there, and it was great. And everyone says, don't buy the first house you see. So we bought the third one, and great place, met some great people, and raised my daughters there. Unfortunately, my wife and I parted ways. We got divorced, and then I found my way to Brantford, and I absolutely love the area. I love the whole coastline. I always tell, my new wife, I said to her when she said, well, we got to find someplace to live. I said, I've lived in the city. I've lived in the country. Find something, over by the coastline. And sure enough, she did. And I give her a lot of credit because she went hunting. She was going to find the right place. And we're very blessed. I have 2 dogs, and I'm about to be a grandfather soon, which I don't even want to discuss that. But so it's been a great year. My daughter got engaged. Another one of my daughters got engaged. So it's been a lot, including running for this election. But going back to why I got involved, I watch things, and it's no secret I'm a Republican. But the way it's become this sport, and I think I said to you last time, it's become a blood sport. We've have this political discrimination that we've gotten into now, and we're not listening to people anymore. We're screaming at each other, and we're supposed to be this progressive nation. We're supposed to be good at what we do, and yet we still have these old mentalities. I mean, my God, it's Halloween, and we're ready to burn people at a stake when it comes to their political views. We got to get to a point where we're getting back to communicating. Big thing. Communication's a big thing for me, and working together so that we can get things done instead of just scaring each other with a lot of one side has one thing to scare you with, one side has the other, and we get nothing done. I'm hoping to contribute. I have nothing against my opponent or anybody that's running these seats before. This is a relay race, and it might be time, the voters will decide, to hand the baton on and give a new, fresh set of eyes on things so that we can keep progressing.
Okay. So so you lived in Brantford for how long?
I'm in here 4 years now. I moved here 4 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And so why, I mean, you were a Mayor Koch fan. Why were you, when did you decide to be a Republican? What was the reason for that?
If you ask my mother, she'll tell you I was a Republican from the day I was born. My parents were both Democrats. She'll tell you a story. We were at the Bronx Zoo and they were sitting on the grass, my mother and father. And I was like, you can't sit there. It says, don't sit on the grass. And my mother and father always said he's going to be a Republican one day. I do have conservative views. That doesn't mean I'm closed-minded. And again, somebody said to me, are you getting in this to go against the Democrats? No, I'm actually getting in this as much to fix some of the things in the Republican Party that I think need to be fixed as much. I mean, you always look at yourself in the mirror first. Being a Republican, there's a lot of things that I do believe in. I believed in, I'm a faith-based person. I don't hide it. It's my moral compass. I know sometimes I've gotten a couple of people jab at me going, oh, we don't need religion and politics. Listen, you look at the 10 Commandments, they're pretty simple things. Don't murder. Don't go covet somebody's wife. I mean, these are just basic moral values. But I am open-minded to social things within reason. There's absolutes and negotiables in life. And you have to look at things that make sense versus don't. And those things come fluently. You can't just put it in a box and say, okay, well, Paul, when I got started, running for office, everyone said, what's your top 3 things on a platform? I said, common sense. They said, common sense is in a platform. I said, ask me a question. I'll give you a common sense answer. The fact of the matter is there were don't hold me to the exact number, but I think there was 12 or 1,400 bills that were presented in the last session. Am I ignoring the other because I just picked 3? Things come along, you have to vote on them, and you have to be able to multitask and bring some good common sense views. And the most important thing is actually not just vote on something for party lines or because you like it, but actually inspect and look and don't just check a box. I think we really have to get back to thoughtful legislation. And I'm not saying people aren't. I know someone's going to say, oh, you're saying everyone's not thoughtful. I think we're very reactive and not proactive anymore. And I think that has to change. So, when I look at a platform and I look at ideas, there's going to be problems and situations and good things that come across every legislator's desk. I believe that I have the ability to do so with my experience in business and multitasking and being a consultant.
All right. I mean, certainly when we talk about those 1,000 or 1,200 bills or so, and I am someone who is on every alert list on those bills, so I get those every day.
Sure.
The vast majority, if they reach the point of a vote, are overwhelmingly either unanimous or close to it. Like a lot of them are procedural. A lot of those 1,200 are naming a park after somebody or honoring somebody, and for the most part, there's a lot of agreement. I think the number was like 90% of bills are voted on across party lines. But then you come down to some key issues. And it's not often that national impacts the state, but we have a big one with abortion. We'll talk about that because you've posted an interesting post on social media, I think today.
Yep.
And on a woman's right to choose. And a little clarification. I mean, you could talk to me about the issue itself, and you could also talk to me about what you're from the social standpoint of helping a woman when she has a child.
Right.
Give me, in your own words, your stance on abortion, and then explain to me this post a little bit, the point you're trying to make.
Okay, so I made it very clear that look, Christine Cohen, I made it very clear, and I made a promise to myself. I will not make this personal, but I am going to challenge, just like 2 ball players that are fighting to see who's going to be the quarterback. I'm going to go and challenge her on the issue she has, and she can challenge me on what she wants. I've asked for 3 debates. I know we're getting one, on the 1st of November, I think, in Guilford. But nevertheless, I had a personal situation, and I'll be brief, but I had a situation in my life where I was faced with this situation when I was much younger. And my vote was to have the child. The woman that I was involved with did not vote for that. And I had a choice. I was either going to be the person that walked away and said, not my problem, or I was going to support. And I said, I forfeited my right when this happens. It takes two people, and I forfeited my right, and I have a responsibility, whether the child's born or not born, to support this person, because this is not an easy decision, and this is something that really frustrates me, and it'll get to the post that I'm talking about. It's getting to a point when we talk about abortion as though we're celebrating it, and someone's going to stand outside, taking a selfie that this just happened. And unless you've been involved in it, because a lot of people support it, but they haven't, or are against it, but they've never been involved in it. And until you've been involved in it, you don't know the emotional draining that it takes on somebody, both sides, okay? At least for any man that cares and has a conscience. So I find this to be a very sensitive subject for me because, like I said, I wasn't for it, but I supported the person because they're a human being, and I can't tell them what to do with their lives. As I said, I'm a faith-based person. God gave us free will. That's my take on it. Now, people might say, well, Paul, I don't believe in God. That's your choice. Like everything else, it's your choice. As long as you're not doing anything illegal, it's your choice. But I choose to believe in God. God gave you free will. It's between a woman, her doctor, and God. I forfeited my right when the woman got pregnant. But it would be irresponsible of me to not see the entire process through, regardless of which one it was. So when I'm watching this go on, and I'm not going to get into the federal level, all I know is this. Connecticut's got some very strong laws. And because of my experience, which is very, very important a lot of times when we're talking about anything that goes on, you need to have some experience or at least some knowledge of something when it comes to abortion. I'm not going to look to replace, repeal, or change any of these laws. And some people that are pro-life would say, and I've got friends that are pro-life that say, what's with this stance? They say, it's always been my stance. Somebody got voted into office that made this law that's very sensitive, and until you are in that position, you don't know. And for me to replace, repeal, or change something, again, is imposing my thoughts and my ideas on it. I've made it very clear, though. I do want more options for a woman. I want more opportunities for education, for them to know everything that's available for them so that they can go and make that best decision possible before they make the tough decision. Because I promise you, there's no celebrating an abortion when it happens. It's not a great situation. It may be a necessary situation for a woman, but it's not something that we celebrate. This is something that we have to look at, and they do believe in the whole health aspect of it, and I understand it. I just think that we have to be less careless and stop using it as a weapon when we're doing politics. It's not cool. Yes, I did, and to address what I posted, I was disappointed, okay? I mean, again, me and my opponent are having some healthy debate to go into this position, but as a person running for this office, she has a responsibility to remember and understand what she said. And I don't know, listen, I don't know what her reason was for saying it, but when you turn around and you just skip the process to get to the result, you leave out a lot of important things. And being able to say in a Facebook post 5 times, abortion, and it's the most important issue in Connecticut, or one of the most important issues in Connecticut, that's insulting to a lot of people that are struggling financially. It's insulting to the crime issue and what happened to these police and what's going on there. And again, I'm not being opportunistic here, but we got some real situations we're facing right now, and they are equally as important as those concerns. And the only reason why I will say that business has been taken care of. We have some of the strongest laws when it comes to abortion in the country. Check the box. It's covered. And everybody says, oh, well, this fear factor of, well, if we let Republicans in office, they're going to change it and overturn it. Not this Republican. Okay. And it's not because I'm a flip-flopper or something, or I'm a rhino. It's because I've made it. My word is my word. I only got 2 years to make sure, remember, if I go back on my word, people are voting me out, and they're going to call me out. And it's going to be on some in 2 years. So again, forgive me for being so passionate and maybe a little over the top about it, but we got to stop. It should be a conversation. It should be a discussion. We should clear it up immediately, not leave it open-ended. And I will talk about one federal level. I got a real problem with our president of the United States. I know we got a problem with the other one, but this one says, I will, if you reelect Democrats, and I'm not misquoting him, then I will vote. I will sign a bill in Congress. Do it now. If it's that important, stop insulting everybody and their intelligence and put it through Congress now and vote on it now. Don't turn around and say that you're going to wait until after the election. I don't like weaponizing things that affect people's being and their lives. We got to be better than that. Sorry, didn't mean to go on a tangent.
No, it's okay. But I'm want to be a little clear on, what did she say that kind of like misconstrued your view or your stance on this?
A woman's right to choose
Yeah.
means that they have a choice between a number of different options.
Yes.
And the one thing I don't think our state does a good enough job of is if the woman chooses to have a child, do we have the same support mechanisms in place, the same funding and everything? And I will tell you, speaking to women, it's one thing to have a law in the books, and it's another thing to make sure that it gets the same attention it should. If a woman does decide to have a child and she's single and where is that support? We need to make sure that we are looking at this holistically, and one big approach to a woman's choice is what I believe in standing for, which regardless of what side it is. And that was not portrayed in my opponent's Facebook post. And
to be honest with you, I mean, for my response to what you just said is that you're sounding far more liberal and democratic than a Republican. I mean, the argument against the standard Republican viewpoint is we protect life when they're in the womb, and then once they're out, we don't care. And that's the Democrat attack on Republicans when it comes to funding early childhood education, those types of cares, single parent support, what have you. Are you proposing an increase in social services, an increase in funding for low-income families? I mean, how would you go about doing that?
So I'm glad you asked this, and this is an important point. When I first started this, I made it very clear, and this goes back to common sense. I said, as far as I'm concerned, on a local level, we should get rid of parties altogether. We should pick the people that are going to do best for our communities. And communities change. There is not a one-size-fits-all. It's very clear, and whether it's Westport, Guilford, Greenwich, that they have a different economic sense than maybe some of our inner cities. And they have different infrastructure, and they have different things. But going back to your question about very liberal view, that's not a liberal view. That's a common sense view. It only becomes a liberal view when we scare people with that and use it to get elected, or on the other side, when we use things. When you look at it, at the end of the day, like I said, here's what I came to the conclusion on. I believe in the sanctity of life. I don't want to have someone have an abortion, but it's not my choice. So I want to be clear. Mm-hmm. But here's what happens. I also know that people will make dangerous decisions if it's not available to them. And, somebody said to me one day, I'm not going to have, an old white guy decide my, whether I can have an abortion or not. And I said, well, first of all, 9 white guys did decide it back then. And right now it should not be a race thing. It should not be a culture thing. It should be a safety thing. What are we going to do in the best interest of women? Because if we take it away completely, we're going to have some dangerous situations on our hands. And that becomes a whole other set of issues, which is why I believe it was put together in the first place, that there were some bad decisions. We have evolved. We have changed as a nation of being progressive people. And daughters are not getting thrown out of their house for getting pregnant. They're not, there's the things that were back then are not now. I think that it should be a last resort option. And at the end of the day, when it comes back to as far as funding, well, that goes back to my point about accountability. We have some spending issues. And if we're going to go take care of people like I'm talking about, then it requires us to stop with some of the frivolous spending that we have, that I believe we would have a real surplus if we actually were fiscally responsible with our dollars. And then we could have something that was a responsible opportunity. This doesn't mean giving out free money to everybody. It's not a free-for-all. But we should have things available to people when they need them. Again, I apologize for going on a tangent. I have a neighbor, and she actually knows Christine Cohen, works with her in some way. And they invited me over one day because they wanted to know my stance. And I'm going to give you a segue into the next one, which is education. And they wanted to talk to me about it. And I will tell you, I know they're super liberal. She wrote a fantastic book. She gave me her book. I started reading it. And it really is about, America being broke. And what's going on with homeless people and stuff. And it's a brilliant book. It really is, because it gives a perspective of the other side that we don't look at. And she never makes it a Democrat, or at least to this point, me reading the book, it's not Democrat, Republican. It's about our government and our politicians ignoring some very important things. So, I do believe that we have a lot of money in this country. And I think we can do some very good things. And we have philanthropists that don't need to be pressed to give that money. They're willing to do it, but we got to stop weaponizing these ideas.
Okay, so let's, I am known for asking follow-up questions.
I packed out a lot for you. Go ahead.
Okay, so if the argument is, and I don't disagree with this argument, I think you'll have a lot of support for this, that we have to also, if we're going to give a young woman, old, whatever it is, having a child, an honest decision to make, they have to feel like they'll have support should they choose to have the child. Mm-hmm. Understood. Now it comes down to money. And so you're saying in some areas, the money isn't being spent well. Is there a particular areas you think that funding should be reduced in the state, or there's something we're spending money on that shouldn't be happening?
I'm going to be honest with you, Steve. That's a long breakdown of things. Here's what I'm going to tell you. And I said this to somebody. They said, well, what makes you think this? Look, the ratings show, I mean, I've looked at multiple reports about our financial status in this country. Mm-hmm. And I said the other day on a Shoreline, they had a chamber thing. Christine Cohen was on there. All the politicians were on there. And I just said, are we on the short list? Are we on the short list for opening a business? Are we on the short list for moving in here? Take away the pandemic. Was this the place that everybody said we had to be? We've become a state of consumption, and we don't produce a whole heck of a lot anymore. So when it comes to, how can I put this? When it comes to cutting, that requires thoughtfulness. It's clear that we have it for decades now. We have not done a good job being fiscally responsible. Otherwise, we would not have the funding issue we have with our with the funds that are 68 billion on unpaid benefits and so on. As a business consultant, when I go into a new business, I don't go in and make a change. That would be irresponsible of me. I go in, I assess the situation, I review it. Mm-hmm. First thing I want to do is I'm going to be a freshman, I'm going to be new, but I hope to get on the finance committee. I want to look at what there is and be able to do a better job of how we spend our money. And sometimes you just have to take an old school approach, a house approach. When we didn't have money, so when my mother got a $100 or $200 bonus, it wasn't a surplus because we had debt and she had to pay bills. And until those debt was paid, it wasn't a surplus. It was a blessing. It was an opportunity to get caught up a little bit. But we don't have a surplus, and we finagle too much with our general fund. And like I said, that you could bring me on another time and we can dissect that. Mm-hmm. But the fact of the matter is that there was at one time we had we still have it. We have the lottery, and that was supposed to go to education. Okay, we're still complaining that we have financial issues there. We have all of these surpluses that come in, and now we're going to have the legalization of marijuana, and you have the legalization of gambling, which is going to be a windfall of money. I just, at what point are we enough with taxpayers and we start looking at how we spend things? So, came full circle here. I would tell you that when I get in there, I would have to assess where it is, but I guarantee you, and I will put 100% on this, that we have the opportunity to go line by line and start making necessary cuts, not bleed the state, not shut it down, but get rid of the garbage and start putting ourselves into a position where we can actually pay for things like we were talking about with single moms, get a better fund for helping people out that need it, the homeless, the whole 9 yards.
All right. I mean, it is hard, when we have a candidate on who's running for office for that seat, and we're speaking in fairly general terms without specifics. So it's, I understand that you want to get in there, and certainly a consultant getting into a place doesn't know the answers before they get in. Mm-hmm. But from a voter standpoint, we want to know what your focus will be. What were the when people ask those top three things, what's your priority once you get into office when it comes to spending? Is it education? Is it social services? Is it infrastructure? Is there something that has said, here is my focus, here's what I'm going to run on throughout this campaign? Is there something that's driven you?
So you're asking me, I just want to clarify, are you asking about are you following up with the dollars and cents? Or are you following up with what are my most important concerns?
Well, so we understand everyone gives a very similar answer. We're going to get in there and go line by line. We've heard it from Stefanowski forever, right? We're going to get in and we're going to say we could clearly save 10% somewhere. But rarely does anybody tell us, here's where we're going to save the 10%. So we're going to ask this question a different way.
Okay.
When it comes to spending, what is your priority?
how about we ask it this way? What am I going to do to generate more revenue so we have the money? Because the cutting thing is easy. You're 100% right. Everybody screams they're going to cut, and I don't want anybody voting for me for that. So here's what you do, okay? How about if we start figuring out who we are? Because I feel like, and again, this is my feeling. Nobody get offended.
Okay.
Connecticut has an identity crisis, okay? We don't know who we are. We have not made ourselves, going back to what I said earlier, about making this the go-to, the short list. Okay, we've chased a lot of businesses out of the state, and people say, oh, we didn't chase them, they left. No, we chased them. We didn't give them a reason to stay. And all you have to do is go as far as Torrington and Ansonia to see the empty manufacturing buildings that are still been sitting there forever, probably for a number of reasons. We need to be able to start bringing businesses back here. When you bring businesses back here, you bring people back here. I said on that chamber event the other day, and I felt like I invented fire, which was insane. What if we had an incentivized tax base? Instead of just saying we're going to give tax cuts, what if we get incentivized businesses, the ones that are here as well as the ones that can come here, that if they do certain things to beautify, to enhance, to improve, whether it's everything from online reviews to upgrading their businesses, to how they treat customers, to maybe the theme that they have. What if we did that and that provoked them into improving what we already have in the state? Because we have some beautiful things. But when you ask about how, let's say, Greater New Haven, how we're going to improve Greater New Haven, I asked everybody on that call the other day, close your eyes and imagine if Yale was gone. What could we possibly talk about that we can be proud of and say that that's the reason why people are coming to Connecticut, a central part of Connecticut? Nobody had an answer. The fact of the matter is that we have neutralized ourselves, and we are no longer that. We claim that we have tourism, but we don't have great tourism, and we have great things here. We do. But we're not promoting ourselves. Messaging is a problem on how we're going to get people here. I see advertisements all the time for Florida, for all these places, South Carolina, come to our state. Are we doing that? Are we asking people to come here, and are we giving them a reason to come here? So I think we can generate more revenue if we got businesses to come back here, brought more people back, and then by just simple law of math, we won't have to charge as much taxes as we do these days.
Well, I mean, in fairness, we just went through probably the greatest portion or greatest event of demand to be in Connecticut we'll ever see, right? We have property values that have skyrocketed because people from out of state wanted to come here. So we do have an unusually high level of revenue coming in right now. We did pay down some of the deficit, still there, not pretending that's not there. So we do have some issues here, but we do have a situation that's fairly unique. It may be temporary, but it's fairly unique. So talk to me about your priorities. Where would this be? So let's suppose you were incredibly successful at making us a massive destination for business, and every manufacturing building was filled, and all the tax revenue came in like crazy. What are your priorities when working on a budget and moving forward?
Well, hold that thought for a minute, because I got to go back, and I promise you I will answer your question.
Okay.
But let's be clear. We had a 100-year storm. People left high-rise buildings and close quarters. We got the windfall by default. People didn't wake up one day and go, I think I'm leaving New York City and coming to Connecticut.
Not arguing that. No, it's
and
not.
There's a lot of money in New York, and those people went on a frenzy and just said, I'm paying this much for an apartment. Sure, I'll buy a house. And there are a lot of statistics showing that people are leaving the state. So to your point, it needs to be seen, but we got to make sure that we're not saying that, oh, look, people are coming here in record numbers. They're coming here in record numbers because we're a bordering town. I would argue that there were people fleeing to Texas and to Arizona as well from California because of the same situation. But go ahead, ask the question again. I apologize. I just wanted to clarify.
Well, first, I'm not making a claim that it's because of a politician that people moved here for anything here. Whatever the reason was, the circumstances are that we have significantly increased the demand to be in Connecticut.
Sure.
And wealthy people who happen to spend money, which generates sales tax. We are going to generate property tax like we never have before. A lot of towns, I think Brantford didn't even raise their mill rate this year because the value of homes went up, and that helped. So with the money we now have, I'm asking a candidate for office what his priorities are when it comes to spending in the state. When you approach a budget, Robin Comey was on. Her priority is early childhood education, right? Ray Ingraham was on. His priority is getting families involved in education and decision-making process. What are Paul Crisci's priorities should he be elected?
My priorities are good. So very simple. One is infrastructure is really important.
Okay.
And I know, again, this is not a tax and spend situation. We need to take care of our infrastructure. We have issues there. We do have bridges and we do have roads that need to be cleared up. That's a gimme because we are a pass-through state. We have people from Rhode Island and New York passing through here and putting a lot of wear and tear on us. Education is a no-brainer. But here's my problem with education and why this goes back to, and I want to be clear, everybody's got something they want to do. And although I want to hold accountability to our spending, we have an issue when it comes to, and everybody's got a special thing. Christine Cohen has the environment. That's her thing. We have an education to career problem. We claim that we do. We have these things going on now. But the fact of the matter is most people, because it's way too expensive to live here, and because we don't have as many resources possible, they get their education and we don't give them a reason to leave. What's here other than our medical and our colleges? What do we have that really keeps somebody here and say, I'm going to continue the legacy of my family? So we really need to be able to put something in place. And these are procedures, preparation before application. So you're asking me a lot about dollars and cents and where I'm going to put money. It's not always about spending money. Sometimes it's about putting things into place to making people want to stay here. So I know it sounds like I'm beating around the bush, but I can't say that I would just go and take a chunk of money and go, this is my baby, I want to spend more money. Again, I'm going back to, because it was the most recent, they asked about what we were going to do for not-for-profits and fund them. And everybody went around and, we need to make sure our not-for-profits, are funded, and we have to look, and we have to, no one really had a solution. I said, not-for-profit 501c3s are not supposed to be a business plan. And the fact of the matter is we have some of the richest, few of the richest not-for-profits in the country right here in this state. And they triple dip. They get their endowment money and their tuition dollars. They get their funding from the state, taking a large part of it, and they have real estate that they don't pay taxes on. And it's a multi-billion-dollar not-for-profit. So just like our president said that the billionaires need to pay their fair share, imagine if, just dare to imagine, and again, it's a conversation, I'm not going to tell you I have a 5-point plan here, but what if these billion-dollar not-for-profits had a trickle-down effect into the smaller not-for-profits and the state didn't bear the burden of giving these tax dollars? Because we're not giving back to these areas that we have. Yes, we can say, well, look at what we did here. We set this up or set this up. At the end of the day, we're draining those areas and neighborhoods with the money that's being drawn from it because they have a tax shelter. 501c3 I ran one. I was in red all the time. I ran a girls softball program. We had 100 kids in it. And every year I was pumping my own money into that program. I was not profitable. I have a hard time understanding how we have billion-dollar programs that continue to have major influence and don't give back to the very process that's helping them. There's a way to save money. I would look to be involved in something like that.
Okay, one, I'm kind of blown away by that answer because usually you're right. Most people say we have to support nonprofits. Not all nonprofits are equal, and not all are running at the way they should be running to give back to the community. All right, interesting answer there. Okay, and I don't want to, I want to make sure we get as many specifics out of you. And I understand you're new. In the last 4 years, even in Brantford. Why this district? You have the 12th district is a group of towns that are as diverse as it gets. Mm-hmm. You could have chosen to move 4 years ago to Milford or to Fairfield or to somewhere else. Why do you want to represent this district?
My wife has family here. I like the area. I was around. So let me go back to how I got started real quick. I didn't go and just pick this. I was approached. We were doing, my company was doing marketing, helping out a politician. I had done a few other political campaigns, and somebody said to me, you know a lot about politics, because I was helping coaching them and, what they, how they should present themselves. And they said, you should run for office. And I said, and people have heard this story a million times. And I said, come see me on the next election. And they did. And my answer was very simple. Guys, I says, what makes my opponent not good enough to get reelected? I said, I don't want to hear the Miss America speech, and I don't want to hear a bunch of ticky-tack insider nonsense. Is there something not right there? Because I'm not going to waste my time and money. And as I think I'm self-funding. I haven't had a fundraiser. Mm-hmm. I've taken less than $1,000 in donations. from people that went on my website. This is all coming out of my pocket. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. But when they spoke to me, I had to think long and hard about it. And I actually said, I told my wife, I'm not doing it. And then I had to go to a business trip in Arizona. Started looking at things. I was doing a lot of research, and I'm like, you know what? It's time I start putting my words where they are. And I used to teach my softball players, learn, earn, and return. And I've learned a lot. I've had the blessing of being able to earn by starting up my business and running it for 17 years. And I feel it's time to give back. And this may not be a competition between me and Christine Cohen. This may be a relay race. It may be just time for her to hand me the baton so I can take it to the next point. Because if you remove parties, maybe I just might have a little bit more experience in other areas than she does to help improve. And then maybe in a few years, a few terms from now, somebody else might have a better opportunity. But we can't be career politicians. So I felt that once I started looking at this, I thought it was necessary that I give back to my community. And let me tell you, Stephen, I don't have to tell you. I've gotten my butt kicked. There are, because I didn't go and say, I'm only going to, speak to the Republicans. I'm speaking to Democrats. I answer everybody on my Facebook. And I will tell you, it's stolen a little bit of my soul. But I'm doing this for the right reasons. I want to give back, and I want to make sure that I'm a servant leader to the community. And I think that's preparation before application. The reason why you're doing it, and then what you do. And I know I didn't give you the answer about how I'm going to spend money. This is how I do things in business. I do not talk about where we're going to cut and what we're going to add until I actually have a full evaluation. And I think you and I both can agree, until you get up to the Capitol, you don't have a full understanding of what there is. And when Christine Cohen ran against Greenberg, they had no record. She was on the Board of Ed. She's a small business owner. He was doing his things, and the two of them were vying for a very valuable position that had, I believe, Mr. Kennedy had it at one time, Junior. Mm-hmm. You get in there. The question is, and I said this to somebody the other day, because it was a similar question you're asking me. And I said, how many times when a pro football team goes to get their college coach, college quarterback, do they say to him specifically, how are you going to score touchdowns in the next 17 weeks? They don't do that. They turn around and they look at that football player and they say, does he have all the attributes, all the necessary tools to go out and win us a game? And if they've been looking for another quarterback, then you got to ask, was the other quarterback good enough to win all the games they want to and take them to the Super Bowl? Because if not, that means they're shopping for a quarterback. The people are going to decide on the 9th if I'm the right quarterback to go in the game and make it happen. And by the way, when you watch a rookie quarterback, they make mistakes. I am the furthest thing from perfect. And until someone can tell me how to be perfect, I'm going to go on the side of, I'm the hardest worker you'll ever find. I'm a people pleaser. And when I say a people pleaser, doesn't mean I'm just going to say yes to everybody. And I'm a communication person. I'm going to tell you, more than half the problems we have in this state are based on communication. And that includes all these issues about everything about this parents' right to choose, police accountability, all these things. Most of them can be solved with good communication. Lots of times we skip the process to get to the result, and it backfires sometimes.
No, I can't say I don't understand what you're saying. The point makes sense, and I understand even when I'm evaluating a rookie state senator or congressman or what have you, you don't have the same level that you would have, for example, for Sean Scanlon, who's been there for a long time, because they haven't. That's just the way life is. That said, as someone who may or may not vote for you or the thousands of people in that district, things that you may do can impact their lives. And there's going to be people who ask, will he take a stand for something that matters to me? And there's going to be a million special interests. And as much as we can talk till we're blue in the face about removing politics, and that sounds like a great utopia, that's not happening. The political parties are still up there, and so we still have to work with those. So
you didn't ask me what I mean by no politics.
All right, go ahead. Tell me what the no politics, common sense tagline that you're all over with. Tell me what that means.
That tagline was well thought out. Okay, obviously everyone knows I'm in marketing, but my tagline was extremely well thought out. No politics means not talking out of both sides of your mouth. I will live and die by my decisions. Okay, and I will go and I will be very clear. I made a promise that if when senator, I will go and have a once a month state of the district whether it's YouTube or whatever is within the allowance that I'm allowed to do, and let everybody know what I've been doing for the last 30 days and why I did it. Listen, I have, as a Republican, I'm sure most of those people are more Second Amendment. I've had gun people ask me, well, you're not doing this. And I said, it's important that we have responsible people to own guns. You can have your Second Amendment rights. I'm a Second Amendment person. I'm not going to hide that. But at the end of the day, we cannot have people we have to make sure that it's a responsible thing. I have a responsibility to make sure that anybody that I know that wants to own a gun, that I take them through the process to make sure that they are safe, that they lock their stuff up, and that they know what they're doing. That's just, if you want to preserve the Second Amendment, you have to do it the right way. You can't just turn around and just be for free for all. And the only reason why I bring that up is that's a Republican issue. I could easily pander. I've told a few people, you may not be voting for me because I'm not going to just tell you yes.
I did see that on your social media page. Yeah.
It's important, and that's the thing. Sincerity is important. Okay, when it comes to police, so somebody asked me about the school situation. And parents have a right. And that was my next door neighbor. And I said to my neighbor, I said to him very simply, he says, well, how are you going to do this? I said, I'm going to bring everybody together. And he says, that's impossible. I said, it's a figure of speech. Given the opportunity, the first thing I'm going to do, I mean the first thing, the minute I'm elected, the first thing I'm going to do is sleep for 2 days and turn off my phone. But after that, I'm going to go and I'm going to go meet I want to meet with the teachers union. I want to meet with, I've met with a number of the parents. I want to meet with the Board of Ed, the Department of Education. I want to know the people that put some of these bills and laws into place. And I want to hear from everybody. And then I want to figure out how we can communicate so everyone can understand each other, because that's half the problem. Steve, I'm sure you've taken time and you've noticed that a lot of stuff got pushed through. I mean, people talk about it in the middle of the night. But I'm frustrated with 6619, which was a bill that was proposed that had a lot of things and scared parents, scared them. People don't process. We're in a world of overload information. And when they're watching TV and they see an issue at a Board of Ed meeting with a parent getting dragged out, they imagine that happening to them. And then it's perpetuated by them during COVID, seeing some people. So a lot of people said to me, Paul, your take on education, you're attacking teachers. I love teachers. I will fight for teachers to the end. And I've had a lot of teachers come up to me and go, Paul, I can't go on the record because I cannot cost myself my pension, but there are concerns. When you write ambiguous language, when you have a broad brush, because if 6619 was supposed to be voted on itself, on its own merits, then it should have been. But it ended up being in a much more consolidated paragraph, very open-ended. Now, again, here's these parents, they're watching TV. Then they see the situation in Cos Cob. Then they see the situation up in Southington, I think it was Southington. And all of a sudden, they start building up their own fears. And nobody's coming out to clarify those fears. They're just saying there's nothing to see here. It's not true. That doesn't fly. You go address the situation the same way people have concerns about police accountability. You can't have this both ways. You can't turn around and say, well, there's nothing to see here on the teacher's end, but the police were going to do this. Police are upset. And the police, we're losing police and teachers because of bad communication and not bringing people to the table that need to have their perspective included also. I'm a communicator. That's what I do. I manage. I've taken on, I've been the underdog as far as managing stuff like this my whole life. That's where my strengths are going to come in. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a math guy. I just want somebody in the room that's going to go, whoa, time out. We can't just say yes to this contract, or we can't just say yes to the spending bill. I'm going to be the pain in the butt that's going to sit there and go, nope, we're not going to end session right now. I'm going to read this thing before I go home. I'm sorry I know I go.
That's okay. I just want for viewers knowing 6619 was about school curriculum.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. All right. Thank you. Yeah. Right, and I am not bunching it. I want to be clear. This does not mean you bunch every school into it. The problem is when it was written, it's open-ended that schools can choose which one they want. Now parents have to wonder, is it my school? We need to do a better line of improving and clearing that up and fixing it so that parents feel comfortable, teachers feel comfortable, and our children are getting educated. That should not sound so crazy to anybody.
Okay. All right. That said, you do have an ability to speak, so we go on for a little while here. I want you, just like every candidate, to give me your elevator pitch. Give me the 2 minutes as to why when I'm in that voting booth in November that I should check a box next to Paul Crisci.
I didn't do a good enough job yet. I want better. I want better for the people of Connecticut. I want better for our kids. I want better for our policing community. But most of all, I want better for and it all goes hands in hand. I want a better political landscape. Okay, I will tell you that our last few years on both sides of the aisle is not the problem. It's a symptom of a problem. We have allowed ourselves to let our politics be a reality TV show, and it's got to stop. We are dealing with life and death situations, and we are allowing ourselves. I said to someone the other day, I feel like we're so many politicians are auditioning for Washington. It's local, speed bumps, infrastructure, schools. We got to take care of the problems and stop defending identity politics. I would look to change that and fix both parties as best as I can by bringing some good communication and common sense.
All right. Paul, I appreciate you coming on, in this case twice, because we had the issue initially.
I appreciate it.
We'll see how the election goes. If we need to, we can pop you back on, answer some questions for us as we get closer.
You can bring me on anytime. I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
But thank you for running. It takes a lot to put your name on a ballot, especially your first foray into politics here, and we appreciate you taking part of the process.
Appreciate you and everybody else, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. Okay, so, kind of a lot to unpack there. My initial reaction is a lot of his answers were not the standard Republican answers. That's a good thing. At the same time, the counter to that is we didn't have a ton of specifics, but the counter to that is it is hard to get specifics. And I've given, I remember when Robin Comey was in her first term, or anybody's in their first term, I usually say we give this person a lot of leeway because it takes time to figure out what's going on up there. The big question is always going to be, we talk about the issue with politics in both parties and how difficult that can be. But the reality is they exist. The reality is the Democrats are likely going to control the Senate and the House. So he has to work within those confines. So there's some refreshing things that we've heard from him. There's some things that are going to be interesting. The abortion discussion was a good one. I was interested to hear that stance. He basically said, listen, if we're going to have abortion, then you also have to make sure all those that are considering abortion have a viable option on the other side. And that apparently would include increasing social services. That's not something I've heard from a traditional Republican in the past. So interesting stances on those things. However, at the same time, we want to hear Christine Cohen's response to some of those things. Obviously, she's going to be strong left when it comes to abortion rights and with social services. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any significant difference there and what her thoughts are on some of his answers. To answer one comment came in here, Nicole, good points, but daughters don't get pregnant on their own. Very interesting, even when we were talking about abortion, how he leveraged the happening on women. In fairness, you may not have seen early on in the interview, he very much did not do that. He very much talked about he was responsible for it, wanted to be part of it, wanted the child, but he lost the right to make that decision when she got pregnant. And I don't think that's putting everything on the woman in that case. I think that's their right. They have that right to choose. Richard is very passionate about doing something to make things better in Connecticut. No question. And it's good to see that passion. And I have seen in him, in some honest moments, it is deflating. It's been that way for Christine Cohen sometimes. You see some of the nastiness that happens in these elections. And they post something that's relatively simple on social media, and just nastiness comes out from the opposing side. And the amount of fake accounts, the amount of nonsense, I've seen it with Robin Comey, I've seen it with Chris Rager. Not that they're responsible for this, but as they post even simple things, let's support X, and then somebody comes on here, you're an asshole, and you're an idiot, and you're terrible, and you're awful, and you're, and sometimes when their own parties. And it's, I got to give people a lot of credit for putting their name on a ballot sometimes, because it's really ugly looking at the social media pages of some of these people. It makes them not want to do anything. Like, why post it? If you're going to just get, to be honest, at times assholes coming out and just slandering and defacing and everybody, attacking people just for what it seems to be for sport. That said, interesting interview. We'll talk more about it on Monday. And on Monday, we'll catch up with all of our candidates. We'll talk about some key points from all of them, what I found interesting. and some of my thoughts on the races moving forward. Next week, likely not Monday, but next week will be Crisci and Cohen, and I'll look to get in Rich, who is running against Moira next week as well, to get all of our first interviews in. And then if there's a need to be later on a week after, we can have someone on. Significantly longer, he can certainly talk, and I wanted to talk about a few other issues, but I wanted to give him his time as well. So if we have to have him back on, we will, and we'll look forward to Christine next week. We've had on many times, and we look forward to seeing her views on this state race. That being said, it is now 4:50. This might be one of our longest, since that live shooter incident we had. This might be the longest podcast we've had. So thanks for sticking with us. If there are questions or comments or things you'd like us to look into, please send me a message. I'd be glad to do so. And I hope you have an amazing weekend. I will see you Monday at 4 o'clock. Until then, have a great